motive for ricin, as well as suspicious envelopes addressed to the president and Senator Ted Cruz. Potentially deadly acts of terrorism at a time when radical Dems are inflaming passions and inciting violence with their divisive rhetoric. We take up the left's dangerous escalation of political differences with former Congressman Jason Chaffetz among our guests here tonight. Also, baseless allegations continue to be thrown and reported at Brett Kavanaugh, while the FBI works to complete its 7th investigation of the Supreme Court nominee.
I say that it's a very scary time for young men in America when you can be guilty of something that you may not be guilty of. This is a very difficult time. What's happening here has much more to do than even the appointment of a Supreme Court justice.
And new signs tonight that the left's crusade to absolutely devastate Judge Kavanaugh could be backfiring, as a red state Dem in a key senatorial race sees her poll numbers absolutely plummet. We'll have the story, of course, and Republican strategist Ed Rollins, California Republican National Committee woman Harmeet Dillon weighing in on the consequences of the relentless Dem smear campaign. And the Trump economy keeps winning. The Dow Jones Industrial Average hitting its 102nd record high close since President Trump was elected. We take a closer look at the record-setting rally. And our top story tonight, potentially deadly, perhaps ideologically motivated attacks against 2 top military leaders. 2 packages containing ricin poison sent to the Pentagon, addressed to Defense Secretary Jim Mattis and the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral John Richardson. Also today, a letter full of white powder sent to Senator Ted Cruz's campaign office in Houston. The powder, determined by authorities to be harmless, pro-marijuana protesters accosting Republican Congressman Andy Harris at his office on Capitol Hill, and leftist activists harassing Senator Mitch McConnell as he walked through Reagan National Airport.
Excuse me, are you assaulting me? Excuse me, am I being assaulted right now?
Why are you putting your hands on her? She's walking.
Excuse me.
I keep stepping on her feet.
Do you want the Republican Party to be the public party that is known for promoting rape and sexual assault? Senator McConnell, do you always turn your back on women like this?
And on top of all of that, the Secret Service revealing that a suspicious letter was sent to the White House yesterday. That letter addressed to the president. The Secret Service says in a statement, quote, the envelope was not received at the White House, nor did it ever enter the White House. All threats directed towards the president or any Secret Service protectee are treated seriously and fully investigated. Also tonight, President Trump is not backing down on his support for Judge Brett Kavanaugh. The deadline for the FBI investigation of the Supreme Court nominee is to be completed Friday. And Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has promised a vote this week. Fox News White House correspondent Kevin Corke with the latest.
It's a very scary time for young men in America when you can be guilty of something that you may not be guilty of.
In expressing support for his Supreme Court nominee, President Trump today called the unsubstantiated allegations surrounding Judge Brett Kavanaugh a symptom of an extremist political environment that's hurting America.
What's happening here has much more to do than even the appointment of a Supreme Court justice. It really does.
Kavanaugh's been accused by 3 women of misconduct who claim he was sexually inappropriate in either high school or college more than 30 years ago. While investigators have yet to interview Dr. Christine Blasey Ford or accuser Julie Swetnick, they have contacted a number of other key figures, including accuser Deborah Ramirez, according to her attorney. Also contacted Ford's friend Leland Kaiser, who was interviewed on Saturday, and Kavanaugh friend Mark Judge, who Ford claimed witnessed the attack in the early 1980s, something he has denied. While it's clear the FBI inquiry continues, what's less clear is just how far-reaching it will go. New York Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer is demanding to be briefed on the FBI's findings before a final confirmation vote is taken. Others are content to let the process play out.
What I have been assured is that they are conducting this background investigation as they do all background investigations, allowing for the investigation to take its course.
As the president takes his midterm message on the road, he carries his party's hopes that Kavanaugh's nomination will survive. But if it doesn't, at least one supporter knows what he'd do if he were in the president's shoes.
I would renominate him, and I would take this case to the American people, and I'd ask voters in Indiana, in Missouri, and North Dakota, and other places where Trump won, saying who he would nominate if he got to be president, and see if the voters want to appeal the verdict of their senator.
Well, I heard Lindsey say that, and certainly it's interesting. But I have to say that I really think that Judge Kavanaugh is going to be accepted and voted on.
Thank you, Kevin Corke. And here to discuss all of the day's developments, Jason Chaffetz, former Republican congressman from Utah, Fox Business contributor, the author of the book, The Deep State, How an Army of Bureaucrats Protected Barack Obama and is Working to Destroy the Trump Agenda. Now available, well, everywhere. We recommend it to you highly. Jason, good to have you with us. Let's start with first these attacks. This is deeply troubling. 2 letters containing the deadly poison ricin sent to the defense secretary, to the chief of naval operations. It turns out to have been a harmless white powder sent to Senator Ted Cruz, the majority leader of the United States Senate, accosted by a left-wing demonstrator or set of demonstrators in Reagan National. It just goes on and on. Why aren't we hearing any kind of voice from the left, from the Democratic leadership on Capitol Hill, saying, please don't do this? And the refutation, to absolutely rebut all of this, it's very simple. Just simply say, don't do it.
Look, this is what you get when you're the tenacious resistance movement. They promised this. They said that the resistance movement would do anything and everything that they could. They promised a scorched earth. They wanted confrontation. They had people like Maxine Waters going out and asking people to be accosted. And then when they actually do it, the Democratic leaders are just absolutely silent about this. It's vicious. It's aggressive. It's pervasive. I don't know the motivation behind each and everything, but in general, this is what you get when you preach the politics of personal destruction. Now, fortunately, at the White House, the Pentagon,
they're practicing it.
They are. And now, fortunately, at the White House, at the Pentagon, at the Congress, mail is screened and radiated. It's something actually our government does pretty well. You're not going to get through that method, and I'm glad that they sorted it out. And hats off to the authorities that have to deal with that on a daily basis.
You know, and watching what's happening now, there is an orchestrated campaign against Judge Kavanaugh, his wife, his daughters, his family. It is the most vicious thing I've ever seen. It is on its face, transparently, absolutely clear that the left has decided to destroy this man irrespective of truth, irrespective of the facts, and irrespective of any regard for decency. And I cannot believe that the American public will not recognize what is before them in such an ugly, ugly form.
No, I know. And shame on the Republican senators who allow this process continue to be extended. What they wanted was the resistance movement. They said they wanted to delay and then defeat at all costs. And they really do believe their mindset is no matter what happens, we have to actually take this person down. And so anybody who got in the way of that, anybody that was put forward by Donald Trump is going to be on the bulldoze end of this. You know, Judge Kavanaugh authored more than 300 opinions. You never hear any debate about that. You'll hear these things about silly things that happened back in.
We didn't even hear, Jason, we didn't even hear probing questions of the judge from the very radical Democratic senators on the Judiciary Committee. They were more interested in posturing and talking about FBI investigations. They had a mantra and they stuck to it. and didn't ask questions, intelligent questions, probing questions at all.
Yeah, at the same time they were saying they didn't really have any questions for Ford or Kavanaugh, they at the same time were saying, well, we need more time to investigate. I mean, it was just this silly set of circumstances. Now, I do think Mitch McConnell, you know, I've been very critical, and I know you have too, Lou, of Mitch McConnell, but I think he is actually the one who's pushing to say, we are going to vote, and we're going to vote soon, and enough of this charade.
He has stood up admirably. In defense of Judge Kavanaugh on the floor of the U.S. Senate. He is making it very clear there will be a vote this weekend between the majority leader and the Judiciary Chairman, Chuck Grassley. They're making it very clear there will be no delay inspired by the left that is suddenly realizing that the American public is aware. They have nothing. This is a great jurist in the person of Judge Kavanaugh, and he deserves to be on the court as appointed by President Trump.
If you sit back and look at it, they're not judging this person based on the merits. They're not arguing about positions. It's the politics of personal destruction. It's the scorched earth philosophy. And then it radiates out. And that's why you have these verbal attacks on the majority leader. You have these other things happen. There's consequences to what the Democrats are doing, and they don't want to take any responsibility for it whatsoever.
No responsibility, and they want to continue a coordinated attack against this man, the president who nominated him, and the values that are foundational to this country. Jason Chaffetz, we thank you for being with us as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Luke.
A reminder to go out and buy Jason's book entitled The Deep State. Up next, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell slamming the absurd reports and reckless reports coming out in the national left-wing media about Judge Kavanaugh.
Last night, the New York Times unleashed this major story. Get this. Judge Kavanaugh may have been accused of throwing some ice across a college bar in the mid-1980s. Talk about a bombshell. But here's what we know, Madam President. One thing for sure. The Senate will vote on Judge Kavanaugh here on this floor this week.
Good for the majority leader. We take that up and much more. We'll be talking with Ed Rollins. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The accusations of Brett Kavanaugh's third accuser, Julie Swetnick, debunked on national television. She's now fuzzy about her claims that then teenage Kavanaugh and others were spiking girls' drinks at house parties.
You know what I'm going to ask. Everyone is wondering if one of those people was Brett Kavanaugh. I cannot specifically say that he was one of the ones who assaulted me. I saw him giving red Solo cups to quite a few girls during that time frame, and there was grain punch at those parties. And I would not take one of those glasses from Brett Kavanaugh, excuse me. I saw him around the punch, I won't say bowls or the punch containers. I don't know what he did, but I saw him buy them, yes.
And NBC went on the air with that. Actually went on the air with it. Swetnick made her allegations in sworn testimony, which is punishable by perjury laws. Now she's cast doubt on her entire story. The question is whether she will be held accountable and suffer the consequences. Two new polls show some good news for Judge Brett Kavanaugh and North Dakota Senate candidate Kevin Cramer. A Harvard-Harris poll finds 60% say the Senate should confirm Judge Kavanaugh if the FBI finds no corroboration of charges against him. And a Gray TV poll finds Republican Kevin Cramer leading Dem Senator Heidi Heitkamp by a full 10 points. Joining us tonight, top strategist for the Great America PAC, former Reagan White House political director, Fox News political analyst, Ed Rollins. Ed, good to see you.
Nice to be with you. Thank you.
I mean, what has happened in this country to basic, fundamental standards on the part of broadcast journalists?
Well, the standards which may have been there at one point in time are no longer there. This has been an invitation in the last week to take any garbage you can find and go dump it on Brad Kavanaugh's lawn. And they found...
But it's obviously a political motivation. It's obviously orchestrated. It is all part of a piece. And it is the politics of personal destruction.
Absolutely. I will predict to you, though, that when the report comes out, and they're not passing it out to each member of the Senate, they have to go to a room like they do in any intelligent document. I bet 10 members of the Senate who are Democrats who will vote against him won't go read that document.
10?
10. I'd be shocked if 10 did.
So you're saying 10 will not read the document?
I'm saying 10 will, no more than 10 will go read the document.
No more than 10, okay.
Right. They will not go do that. They'll stand up.
How many of them do you think will be so persuaded by getting precisely what they demanded, an FBI supplemental investigation, that they will actually be open-minded, honest, and demonstrate the integrity to vote for Judge Kavanaugh? Well,
there's none of them. I mean, the bottom line is they have made up their mind, and starting with Schumer, who led the charge from the start to the finish, they have found nothing. If they would have found anything, these lawyers would have basically said something to the press.
What about Jeff Flake? He says, you know, the person with that obvious partisan philosophy can't possibly sit on the Supreme Court.
My feeling on Jeff Flake is this. If we get the two women, and certainly McConnell can persuade them because there won't be anything in this document, then I don't care where Jeff Flake goes. He can go switch 15 more times between now and the vote. We need the two women.
Murkowski and Collins.
If we get them and we get if we get the 50, I think there'll be a senator or two on the Democratic side in tough races who may come over. If not, we have the 50. Let's go put them through and get it done.
The ACLU spending $1 million on an ad against Judge Kavanaugh.
Outrageous.
This was once a liberal but bipartisan group. It is no more. The American Bankers Association has always been liberal, but now the president of the American Bar Association is stepping into this. I mean, this is raw, this is nasty, it's unprecedented.
This is hand grenade fights. They're doing everything they can to knock this man out, and he's a man of great credibility. And I think at the end of the day, he'll be a great member. And the reality is, Lou, this is a guy who sat on this court for 12 years, a very visible, second highest court in the land. No one has ever talked about his temperament. No one's ever talked about his bad decisions. He is considered an impeccable judge and should be elevated.
Jeff Flake, I want to return to him for just a moment, saying that that this judge is too partisan. Has he ever heard of Ginsburg? Has he ever heard of Sotomayor? I mean, are you kidding me?
Well, I go back far enough that I was there when Marshall.
Justice Scalia. I mean,
Marshall and lots of others. I mean, the reality is they have points of view, and they push usually the point of view of the president. Once in a while, we pick up a Republican that doesn't live up to it. But
this must be a defining moment, because Flake appears to be the most intellectually challenged person to ever sit in the U.S. Senate. I shouldn't say ever. In my lifetime, I mean, he is conflicted. He's all over the map. He's absolutely bizarre.
He sold his soul now to his good friend on the Democratic side without getting anything in return. They always talk about
his good friend Collins, or his good friend Schumer?
Well, both. And at the end of the day here, he's got nothing in return. So all these bipartisan deals always seem to be we give something up and they give nothing up.
All he's done through his entire term in the Senate.
All I care about is 50. We get the 50, move forward, and he'll have an honorable career on the Supreme Court. And we can thank Mitch McConnell for forcing this.
Ed Rollins is in a generous mood tonight. He is embracing the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. And I'm just going to salute him for his stand so far. When he gets the confirmation, then I will join the embrace. And may I do that?
Thank you.
Ed Rollins, I've just never seen him so warm and fuzzy. My gosh, it's kind of inspiring.
My wife said to me this morning, this is the epitome. She said, I'm 75 years old. She said, don't pay any woman a compliment today. You'll get in trouble. I said, Sherry, I've been... It's a sad state of affairs when I can't tell someone they look nice.
Well, I think the president had it right, and Sherry, your wife, is confirming that. Young men in this country right now are in a dangerous situation.
Absolutely.
Ed Rollins, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Do you think the radical left's relentless effort to smear Judge Kavanaugh and derail his Supreme Court nomination without any regard for truth or decency will backfire on the Dems in the midterms? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. Up next, more on, well, whatever he is, no adjective required, Jeff Flake, and the comments he makes at the twilight of his political career.
I sometimes feel like I'm a man temporarily without a party.
No, you're just betraying everything that you said you once stood for. We'll take that up and much more. Harmeet Dillon with me next. Stay with us. Well, if you need any further proof on how dim-witted Rhino Senator Jeff Flake can be, consider his comments made today about Judge Kavanaugh's testimony.
I was very troubled by the tone of the remarks. The interaction with the members was sharp and partisan, and that concerns me. And I tell myself, you give a little leeway because of what he's been through. But on the other hand, we can't have this on the court.
I mean, I don't even know what you say about this man. The lame duck senator thinks, well, that defending your good name and integrity is considered sharp and partisan. The senator might look at his decision to align himself with the radical left that sat on that committee, ask himself if, they really would be nonpartisan and whether or not their shameless attacks on him, their politics of personal destruction, should be tolerated by someone so sensitive, particularly as Senator Flake. Joining us now, attorney, RNC committeewoman for California, Harmeet Dillon. Harmeet, great to have you with us. Hey, just give us your reaction to first Senator Flake.
I'm disgusted. It is high time this man left the Senate. Clearly, he has some post-Senate game that he's playing here. But, even so, he should be doing his job right now. And I would hope and get the benefit of the doubt to Senator Flake that if somebody accused him of something like this, he would be righteously angry like any good man would be, like any person in my own life would be. And that's the only way to react when you're falsely accused of a crime like this. And so he's way out of line in criticizing. And these senators have all sat there in judgment, by the way, many of them with philandering, drinking problems, all kinds of character issues themselves, gaslighting this man, accusing him, and then feigning shock and clutching their pearls when he reacts like a human being. It's ridiculous.
Watching him there at the Atlantic Conference of Leftists, playing that game, he was so sincere and so earnest, so deeply troubled. I was just waiting for him to start washing his hands. It's just, to me, it's infuriating. Can you imagine Judge Kavanaugh having his fate in the hands of anyone like Jeff Flake? How he must feel.
Oh, I can imagine it, Lou. Everybody who might be up for a judicial confirmation or any confirmation is imagining it right now, and they're horrified at what they're seeing, and they're horrified that they will be judged by this crew of illegitimate characters with their Alinsky tactics, personalizing, demonizing, attacking, and destroying innocent people like this. It's just not worth it when you look at that to see what you have to go through. And the left has lost all scruples. And unfortunately, they're being joined by a couple of flaky Republicans as well. So this is a low point in my 30 years plus in politics. Seeing what happened this past week in Washington is really a low point for America.
It's a low point for America, but I have to say, the Republicans have a chance to demonstrate strength and righteousness when November 6th rolls around. If these Dems pull this off, destroying this man and his family and taking control of the House and the Senate, I think the country is well on its way to hell. I mean, it's just unbelievable what we're witnessing. And the Republicans, the rhino cowards in the Senate and the House, but particularly in the Senate, if they don't rise to this historic occasion, I don't even want to contemplate it.
Well, there is some hope. I mean, Lindsey Graham certainly did a terrific job this past week. I was really inspired. And even today, Senator Corker came out and said, you know, this is done. I'm voting for
I don't need hope. I'm never hopeless. And neither are Americans. But I am looking at facts that tell me that with the quality of character and the strength of character and the intellects at work on Capitol Hill right now, we need to do far better. I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, I agree.
Your sense right now of where we are with this election, are we, Tester right now is 4 points ahead of his challenger in Montana. In Missouri, the challenger to Claire McCaskill, Josh Hawley, he's running ahead. We're looking at some real opportunities for Republican victories. Your sense of where we're going?
I agree. You know, in those states you mentioned, also North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp is under a lot of pressure, and she hasn't committed herself as yet, and so that's looking really good for us as well. The polls are looking good on this Kavanaugh issue. It's, I think, really galvanized Republicans, and so if we can just deliver for the voters, and you know, first of all, deliver this confirmation, I think is going to be very important, and then keep people focused on what the Democrats are about and what's at stake for our country. I think we can do well. I mean, you know, California, where I'm sitting, obviously is the battleground for taking back the House for the Democrats, and they're fighting very hard here. We're fighting back as well.
Think about
the RNC is deploying resources.
The number of illegal immigrants in California and the congressional seats that their numbers provide the Democratic Party, just in that one state.
Yes.
And why isn't the RNC? Why aren't Republicans doing anything, talking about the issue, coming to terms with it? And of course, we have the national left-wing media, which are part of the orchestration.
Well, some of them are, Lou, but the problem is that we are playing by these old school rules, and the Democrats have moved on from them. The Democrats will stop at nothing to win, and we Republicans are, you know, still, you know, sort of playing croquet, and that's not going to work today. We really have to fight back and fight at their level. So is the RNC playing croquet, or are you ready to take on what is obviously a war against decency, a war against truth by the left? We are fighting hard, and, you know, it's a matter of focusing on the races where involvement can make a difference, and certainly in Southern California, where the number of races is at stake, we have resources there that we're deploying, and in other parts of the country as well. So I'm, you know, confident that we're doing everything that we can to keep the seats that are at risk and win back some of the seats that we can. But, you know, ultimately, you pointed to a critical problem. There's a quality issue amongst candidates as well, and that's, you know, that's, I think, a concern.
Yeah, but we knew this election was coming. We knew this election was coming. Why in the world would the Republican Party not want warriors on the streets instead of a bunch of less than desirable candidates? I'll put it that way. Harmeet, good to have you with us.
Yes.
Harmeet Dillon, thanks.
All right, thank you, Lou.
President Trump today touting his historic America First trade deal with Mexico and Canada, calling out China for its rampant theft of American intellectual property.
Now, as you probably have heard, we're looking at China and other countries, and we're straightening out some of these horrible deals that stole our wealth, stole our jobs, stole so much from us, actually, in many ways, stole our dignity as a country.
Joining me now, Chris Kobach. He is Kansas Secretary of State and Kansas Republican gubernatorial nominee, representing, of course, the grand old party. Good to see you.
Great to be with you, Lou.
And Chris, let's start with, if we may, your thoughts about what Judge Brett Kavanaugh and his family are going through right now. And Mitch McConnell has stood up. Lindsey Graham has stood up. The president has been steadfast throughout. But there is an extraordinary alignment between the national left-wing media and, of course, the radical Dems who control the Democratic Party.
You know, it's the greatest irony I see here, Lou, is we're seeing the nomination and the confirmation of a man to the highest court in the land, the epitome of due process, yet the procedure by which he is being tested has thrown due process out the window. The Democrats wanted to take away his right to confront his accuser by answering after her. All standards of evidence are thrown out the door. Evidence is being allowed that is 30-plus years old, which would never be allowed. And it's just crazy what's happening. And it's just a circus.
As Mitch McConnell mocked the left today, going after the New York Times for pursuing as well this story about throwing ice in a college bar. This is the height of absurdity, idiocy. It is repugnant and at the same time, so it is just astonishing that even the left could be this stupid.
Well, you know, it shows to me how now they are, the means justify the ends to the American left. Truth does not matter. Destroying a man's reputation and character does not matter. Nothing matters, and they will descend to anything.
Chris, what matters to Republicans? That they would permit this kind of conduct without consequence, so that they wouldn't be in, you know, Obama famously said, when they bring a knife to the fight, bring a gun. The Republicans aren't even showing up with a knife. They are, it is astonishing to see the lack of street smarts, of passion, of commitment on the part of the party should raise up as one against this kind of evil.
Yes. And, you know, I think, Lou, what you've hit on is this failure of many Republicans to come in and fight is the same reason why President Trump was elected in the primaries of 2016. Republican voters wanted a street fighter, wanted a president who would take China on, wanted a president who would take on these issues and would take on the Washington swamp, and who obviously fights back and does hit back harder when he is hit. And now you're seeing the opposite type of politician in the U.S. Senate, unfortunately. Hopefully they'll learn from the president.
Well, and Mitch McConnell, it looks like he is learning and beginning to stand up. You're ahead slightly in your race there in Kansas. How's it going to go, and how are you going to get there?
Well, yeah, you're right. We're leading, but by single digits. So in a race, in a midterm race where the election is close, it all depends on who shows up to vote. President Trump is coming in this Saturday in a few days to Kansas. First time since he's been elected president, and first time a presidential visit has occurred in Topeka in about 10 years. So it's a big, big deal, and that will boost our voters. It'll get Republicans fired up, and that's exactly what we need to help motivate our people to the polls on Election Day.
And you're running in full support of the Trump agenda.
Absolutely.
It must astonish you when other candidates across the country, in the House of Representatives in particular, are not lining up side by side with this president. It astonishes me, and hopefully those rhinos will meet their appropriate fate.
I agree, and many did meet their fate in the primary elections this past summer and fall throughout America, including in Kansas. Right. And you know, in Kansas right now, you've got a choice between me, a conservative who's anti-tax, anti-amnesty, enforcing our laws, and pro-gun, versus I have two liberal opponents actually who are the opposite on all of those issues. And you would think Republicans would say, all right, this is in our platform, we're going to fight for it. But as you say, Lou, many just don't want to fight, and many don't even know what's in our platform.
Well, you know, a number of folks I'm talking with say that this outrage over against the radical left, the Dems, is going to really create a huge opportunity for victory for the Republicans, and I think you will help prove them right. Chris Kovac,
I hope so.
Great to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, corrupt Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein gets to keep his job for at least a little while longer. We take up his future and more. Judicial Watch's Tom Fitton joins us. We'll return in just a matter of moments. Please stay with us. Rosenstein set to meet privately with House Judiciary and Oversight members on October 11th. Rosenstein called to explain reports he proposed secretly recording Trump early last year. The president saying he will delay his planned meeting at the White House until after the Kavanaugh confirmation is concluded. Joining us now, Judicial Watch's president, Tom Fitton. Tom, great to have you with us. Let's start with this thing with Rosenstein. Going to the House, meeting with two committees and their members. also waiting to go see the boss. What is this headed to? What is the point of it all?
Well, that's a good point. Why isn't there a public hearing? I would have had emergency hearings as soon as it was reported that Rosenstein was discussing with his underlings. Remember, the FBI reports to Rosenstein at the FBI techniques to overthrow the President of the United States. Instead, we're running around looking up yearbook information about Brett Kavanaugh.
And whether or not he threw ice in a bar in college. I mean, this is... we've reached a new low. I mean, we've got a Congress that doesn't function, frankly, led by Paul Ryan in the House with all of this nonsense. I've heard a number of people cheering Paul Ryan is now behind the process. What process? And we're talking about almost half of this president's first term in office dragging now because of the witch hunt, the Mueller special counsel, Congress that is reticent to put forward elements, important elements, including the wall, put it forward into law. This is astonishing. And now we're 35 days away from the election.
I guess the silver lining is that there's a meeting taking place at all, given the fact that the leadership of the House has zero interest in conducting oversight in a month before the election. They don't want to upset any voters for or against them, and that includes providing basic oversight. And so they'll abdicate their role as much as they can, and it's only because of the outrageousness of what Rosenstein did is that they're investigating or asking him any questions at all. And frankly, he's going to be, unless if the president fires him, the president faces an obstruction of justice investigation. So I suspect there'll be a stalemate as Mueller continues running the Justice Department.
Now, you Judicial Watch, have sued to get the Pentagon to turn over to you the records on Stephen Halper, who was the former Cambridge professor who received all of these contracts from the Department of Defense, $1 million worth. What is that all about?
Exactly. What is that all about? He was evidently an informant or a spy for the FBI, maybe other agencies. Was the Defense Department used as a cutout to pay him?
I hate to interrupt you. A lot of people in the media are saying we shouldn't mention his name.
Other than the New York Times, who got leaks from the Justice Department and FBI about his name. But anyway, this figure was sicked on the Trump campaign, sent to Europe to try to ensnare people like Papadopoulos and Carter Page and get them to confess to collusion that never took place.
Why aren't we hearing something from the special counsel about this? Why isn't there an investigation?
Because he's the special counsel's guy. The information he gathered, that was part of the material that was used to generate leads for the special counsel that was later appointed. And the question is, was he still being used by the special counsel? Again, no one's asked Mueller, have you used the dossier? Have you used spy information that this figure was targeted with over? I tell you, we're investigating the multi-agency effort to spy on Trump. Congress is investigating a yearbook words. That shows you the decrepit state of Washington.
Well, decrepit, rancid. It is a swamp of the highest order, or the lowest.
But you know, the abuse, quickly, Lou, the abuse.
I'm sorry, we got to hard out.
Sure,
I've got to get out of here. You got 10 seconds. Go for it.
The abuse continues. The targeting of Kavanaugh is government abuse by the Senate.
Tom, good to have you with us. Tom Fitton.